Nikke, I'm gonna be honest, I don't play this game nearly as much as I should, but I do recommend it because it's actually a pretty nice experience. This is Kilo. I do not, in any capacity, like her English VA, but it's better than anything Wuthering Waves has to offer. So I play in JP. I have my personal favorites. Soline, I've mentioned this numerous times. Epinel, who I legitimately think, you should go for and you should build her up because she's cute and her relationship story is very nice. Do it if you haven't already. If you've done it before, do it again and then come back in the comments and tell me your thoughts. Regardless of the circumstance, I think as I progressed and played numerous different gachas, one of the things that I suppose sticks out to me is twofold. First off, the way a game chooses to represent its story, and secondarily, if the game has bond stories. We're going to get into the second part later on, but the story presentation of Nikke, in my opinion, is exceptional. And I think it's not necessarily due to the concept of like, oh, the character designs are really nice, or oh, there's CG and cutscenes. No, it's more so due to the interlacing, or at least the progression between when you're actually playing the game, whether that be you autoing or not, doesn't matter, and when the game chooses to present bits of story to you. Because there are games, like Arknights, that gives you walls of text beforehand. And I think if you spend too much time giving a player a bunch of story, they're gonna be disconnected. There's obviously those moments where you just want to get to the gameplay and, you don't really care about the story, you don't want to read it. And yeah, it's nice to have a log or something like that where you can go back and catch up on other things you missed. And Nikke does have that feature. But I think just giving me, the player, the option to skip through the story or not, and not necessarily tossing 5 to 10 minutes worth of text or a essentially cutscene at my face before I get into a fight is nice. Don't get me wrong, it's not like Nikke has the most involved gameplay depending on what you're doing, especially in campaign, especially at least the earlier stages, but it's still nice that the story itself is presented to you in small, bite-sized amounts. You get the information you need, you get some important context to the situation itself, but you're not overloaded with lore that you don't really care about. The main focus of Nikke is kind of put on the characters themselves, and yeah, obviously the plot kind of, has a lot more significant moments later on as you progress, but I do think it's carried a lot by the fact that each character kind of has their own set personality traits, and it's not necessarily a straight-laced path. Nobody is just, the typical, very hard-assed commander or leader aspect of one specific character. Everybody does have their own individual flaws and their own backstories, and it's very nice to have, don't get me wrong. I like Rappy much more than I thought I would. Same thing with Lapis, to be honest. And I think that contrary to stuff like Arknights, where it's presented to you with the wall of text, or contrary to even something like Aethergazer, wherein the combat in Aethergazer is so fast-paced that the very calm downtime of something like the plot in that game, or even comparatively something like Snowbreak Containment Zone, where the plot kind of happens first, and then you get the gameplay, but the gameplay is so inherently different from what's going on, or it doesn't feel like it's changing so much, especially the environments, that it kind of feels disconnected. I think Nikke does a pretty good job of presenting to you the information, the situation, having enough differentiation between chapters in both the landscape you're fighting in, the enemies being presented to you, and what's happening on screen, both the environmental effects and just the general characters being displayed, that it makes it pretty easy to not necessarily even go through one by one, but more so to just get into. Now, I do believe that, at least for me personally, the earlier chapters weren't as interesting. I think that the earlier chapters of Nikke didn't really grab me at first, especially during the introduction of the, I think, very first chapter of the game itself. Because, yeah, there are some very important or very significant moments that happen there, but by that point, I don't really care about anyone. So the very important or very emotional scenes that are supposed to be happening don't really matter much to me. That's a personal thing. You can entirely ignore that. But I think that if I'm recommending a gacha game, and I'm trying to decide between all of the respective games I do play, Nikke is among the higher rankings. Now, obviously, it's not going to overtake something like Genshin Impact, but I do think Genshin is an entirely different niche of its own, just because that can be played as sort of a main game, especially with the time commitment you need to make. Nikke is very mobile friendly. It has its own PC launcher. But if I'm comparing that to the likes of Aethergazer, or Brownness 2, Blue Archive, and so on, I think Nikke is kind of matching Blue Archive within the context of Blue Archive excels in character development, excels in character bond stories and the designs. If you like cute and funny designs, you're going to get that in spades over there. Whereas Nikke has better gameplay. And I think that honestly just depends on which one you prefer. If you don't care about the gameplay at all, but you just want great characters, I would personally say, hey, go play BA, but understand that on PC, you're not getting a launcher, you're getting an emulator, and if that's the deciding factor for you, go with Nikke. But if you want unique gameplay, if you do want to play it and actually see what's happening on screen and try to learn character kits, I do think that Nikke has a much better learning curve for all that and a lot more for you to do later on. Excluding those 2 games, if you want fast-paced combat, A3 I recommend. It does not have a PC launcher. Don't play it on BlueStacks. It is god-awful. Do not, please do not play it on BlueStacks. You will regret it. I regret it. I tried it. No. But it's getting a PC launcher soon. So if you start out on your phone, you get a bunch of goodies, and it's anniversary. So, I mean, hey, you can just start the game now. Start the game now. It's worth it. I would show footage here, but I'm going to be honest. If I stretch this to match the screen size of Nikke, you would all individually be able to count the pixels. It's not worth it. Contrary to that, Brown Dust 2 is a game I actually recommend. It doesn't have relationship stories, and I think one of the reasons I've come to like Nikke characters so much is the relationship stories. The bond stories made me like Lapis and Soline and Epona a lot more, just from a pure design perspective, now onto a personality perspective as well. So I have more issues recommending to any of you a game without those bond stories. Nikke also gets continuous improvements. Now we have collection items. They're nice. I don't have many of them. My wife's Epinel and Soline don't really have them yet, but they will get them one day. When they do, I will make a video when they do. Okay, believe that. Hold me to that. But regardless of circumstance, Nikke does get quality of life. It does have interesting events, and I do think that it can be a bit more difficult to learn, especially in the event that you don't have someone to guide you through, or maybe like a character that doesn't necessarily have a recent release, so the guides may be outdated depending on when you're looking at them, or at least you don't know if they're up to date for current content. I can see a problem with that. But I do think from a basic standpoint, the gameplay itself is nice. I think your biggest issues would both be figuring out what your daily loop is, first off, and then secondarily, getting through that 160 wall. But if you plan out accordingly, you can obviously grab a character from Annie or Half Annie. In this instance, Kilo was maxed out perfectly fine, free. So that could be one of your respective 5 Nikkes to break that 160 wall. And you won't really need that until much later on. I have it completed now, but I don't need to. But yeah, play the game. I like the game. I'd say that the game itself is in a better position than some of the other gachas out there. If I'm deciding between this and something like W right now, I'd say W if you want active gameplay. But if you want active gameplay, go play Genshin and HSR or Honkai Impact 3rd or any other game that's more developed and in a better state than W is now. Maybe that comes out and be better later on. But if you want a mobile game that you can play on a PC, your tablet, whatever, Nikke is really good. Find a character you like, attach yourself to them, and then get into the game. That's what I did here, and I don't regret it. Epona was cute. I will always maintain that personality trait. I will always maintain that opinion too. Either way, subscribe. I will make a video on Blue Archive next. So hey, if you're interested in that, I'll see you there and goodbye. Side note, don't wail. Don't wail in the sense of don't check out the shop. The exchanges aren't that good. But at least you can save your mileage tickets.